Yay!
Okay, good. Thank you. Thank you, friends on Zoom, for your patience. I was finding myself engulfed in some pre-Shabbat thinking, and then all of a sudden I got a text from Cheryl saying, "You coming?" So shout out to Cheryl. Thank you for the reminder that it is Shabbat. It's happening. It's here. Thank you so much. Okay, so we are going to get started. It sounds like we had somebody who was lighting Shabbat candles for us. How wonderful. We are going to
Thank
light
you
candles
so
in
much.
person one more time. But before we do that, let's just take a moment to get into the Shabbat spirit, into the Shabbat rhythm. Let's take a deep breath. Yai da 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 da. Yai da 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 da. Yai da 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 da. Yai da 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 da. Yai da. Yay, da, 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 da. Yay, da, yay, da, 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 da. Yay, da, 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 da. Yay, da, 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 da. Yay, da, 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 da. Yay, da, 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 da. Yay, da, da, da. Yay, da, 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 da. Yay, da, da, da. Yay, da, 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 da. Yay, da, da, da. Yay, da, 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 da. We are going to welcome in Shabbat with the lighting of Shabbat candles. It's my pleasure to invite up Anne to light the candles for us, and the blessing is on page 120.
I begin with a prayer of gratitude for all that is holy in my life. God needs no words, no English, no Hebrew, no semantics, and no services, but I need them. Through prayer, I can sense my inner strength, my inner purpose, my inner joy, my capacity to love. As I reach upward in prayer, I sense these qualities in my Creator. To love God is to love each other, to work to make our lives better. To love God is to love the world God created and to work to perfect it. To love God is to love dreams of peace and joy that illumine all of us and to bring that vision to life. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu l'hadlik ner shel Shabbat.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat. We continue on page 138 with the words of Lecha Dodi. Lecha Dodi likrat kalai alalai 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 b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kalai alalai 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 b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Shamor v'zachor b'dibur echad hishmi'anu el hameyuchad Adonai echad u'shmo echad l'shemu tiferet v'litchila. Lecha Dodi likrat kalai alalai 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 b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kalai alalai 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 b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Likrat Shabbat lechu ki hi mekor habracha merosh mikedem nesucha sof ma'aseh b'machshava tchila. Lecha Dodi likrat kalai alalai 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 b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kalai alalai 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 b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Please rise in the ways you're able. Boi v'shalom ateret bala gam besimcha ufetzola toch emunei am segula boi chala boi chala. Lecha Dodi likrat kalai alalai 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 b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kalai alalai 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 b'nei Shabbat nekabela. We continue on page 146 with the words of Baruch Hu. Please remain standing. Yai la 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 la. Yai la 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 la. Yai la 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 la. Yai la 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 la. Yai la 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 la. Please be seated. We're on page 151. As you taught Torah to those whose names I bear, teach me Torah too. Its mystery beckons, yet I struggle with its truth. You meant Torah for me. Did you mean the struggle for me too? Don't let me struggle alone. Help me to understand, to be wise, to listen, to know. Lead me into the mystery. Baruch atah Adonai, Ohev Amo Yisrael. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Vaed. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha bechol levavecha uvechol nafshecha uvechol meodecha. Ve'hayu hadvarim ha'eleh asher anochi mitzavecha hayom al levavecha. Veshinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam beshivtecha b'veitecha uvlechtecha v'derech uvshochbecha uvkumecha ukshartam leot al yadecha v'hayu letotafot beinenecha Uchtabtam al mezuzot beitecha uvisharecha lema'an tizkeru va'asitem et kol mitzvotai v'yitem kadoshim le'elahechem. Ani Adonai Elohei excuse me. Asher hotzeiti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim lihiot lachem le'Elohim. Ani Adonai Elohechem, Adonai Elohechem emet. This is a poem by Alden Salavi. Listen, dear self. Remember to breathe. Remember to fill your chest with the sweet taste of living, to fill your heart with a gentle gift of peace. The breath of God surrounds you. Let it flow through you. The pulse of the universe beats with you. Let it enliven you. Invite your inhale, the willingness of this moment. Release your exhale and surrender to being. Fill your lungs, feel them, feed them, heal them, and you will know the majesty of now and the mystery of forever. Let's turn to page 160 for the words of the Chatima of Hashkivenu at the bottom of the page. Baruch atah Adonai haporei sukat shalom. Shalom aleinu ve'al kol amo Yisrael. Baruch atah Adonai haporei sukat Shalom aleinu ve'al kol amo Yisrael. Ve'al Yerushalayim ve'al kol amo. Ve'al Yerushalayim Shalom. Ve'al Yerushalayim ve'al kol amo. Ve'al Yerushalayim Shalom. Baruch atah Adonai haborei sukat shalom. Shalom aleinu ve'al kol amo Yisrael. Shalom aleinu ve'al kol amo Yisrael. We turn to page 164 as we begin our tefillah. Please rise in the ways you are able. Adonai sefatai tiftach ufi yagid tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu ve'Elohei avotenu ve'imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, ve'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, ve'Elohei Leah. Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor v'Hanora El Elyon Gomer Chasadim Tovim Ve'konei Hakol Ve'zocher Chasdei Avot v'Imahot Umevi Geula Livnei V'neihem Lema'an Shemo Be'ahava Melech Ozer u'Moshiach u'Magen Baruch atah Adonai Magen Avraham ve'Ezrat Sarah Atah Gibor le'olam Adonai Mechayeh hakol atah Rav le'Hoshia Morid hatal Mechalkel chayim bechesed Mechayeh hakol berachamim rabim Somech noflim verofeh cholim Umatir asurim Umekayim emunato Lishenei afar Michamocha ba'al gevurot Umido melach, melech memitz umechayeh, umatzmiach Yeshua, v'ne'eman atah lahachayot hakol. Baruch atah Adonai, mechayeh hakol. Atah kadosh v'shimcha kadosh, u'kadoshim b'chol yom yahalelucha selah. Baruch atah Adonai, ha'el hakadosh. please take a moment for your own personal prayer and feel free to be seated when your prayer is complete. We're on page 180. Oh, say shalom, shalom, bimromav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'imru amen. Hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Amen. Oh, say shalom, shalom, bimromav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'imru amen. Ve'al kol Yisrael, amen. We now come to Seder Kriyat HaTorah, the service for the reading of the Torah. We are on page 362, and it's my pleasure to invite up Jonathan King to be our Torah helper this evening, and I invite everyone else to please rise. Ein kamocha va'elohim Adonai, ve'ein kema'asecha, malechutecha malechut kol olamim, umemshaltecha v'chol dor v'dor. Adonai melech, Adonai malach, Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed, Adonai os le'amo yitein, Adonai yevarech et amo v'shalom. Amen. Ki mitzion tetzei Torah udevar Adonai mirushalayim. Baruch shenatan Torah, Torah. Baruch shenatan Torah, Torah. Le'amo Yisrael b'kdushato. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adonenu, Gadol Shemo, Gadlul Adonai iti, uneromema Shemo yachdav. Lecha Adonai hagedulach v'hagevurach v'hatiferet v'hanetzach v'hahod. Ki cho b'shamayim uvaretz, ki cho b'shamayim uvaretz. Lecha Adonai hamamlecha v'hamid naseh lechol lerosh. Al shlosha devarim, al shlosha devarim, al shlosha devarim haolam omed. Al shlosha devarim, al shlosha devarim, al shlosha devarim haolam omed. Thank you. Please be seated. This evening, we are going to be reading from Parshat Kedoshim. We'll be reading Leviticus chapter 19, verses 13 through, verse 14 through 16. And it is my pleasure to invite up Alan to bless the Torah this evening.
Baruch et Adonai hamborach.
Baruch Adonai hamborach leolam va'ed.
Baruch Adonai hamborach leolam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher barucha banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Amen. Lo tekalel chereish v'lifnei iver, lo titen michshol, ve'areta me'elohecha ani Adonai. Lo ta'asu avel b'mishpat, lo taseh pnei da'al, ve'lo tedar pnei gadol, betzedek tishpot amitecha. Lo telech rechil be'amecha, lo ta'amod al dam re'acha, ani Adonai.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Thank you. While we have the Torah out still in our midst, let's think of those who are in need of healing at this time, healing of body, healing of mind, healing of spirit. If you are thinking of someone who's in need of healing, or if you yourself are in need of healing, I encourage you to share their name with us. We'll start with our friends on Zoom. Feel free to unmute momentarily to share the names of those you're thinking of.
My Danny, Kit and Karen Rasmussen, Barbara Lowe, Muriel and Stephen Gregg, Dennis Elliott, Susan Amaro, and Frank Martins.
Esther Macauer.
Alana Rivka Batmindel V'Chaim Avraham, the peoples of Haiti, the Sudan, the Kol Yoshvei Tevel, the Ani.
And if you are joining us in person and would like to share the name of somebody you are thinking of in person or in aloud or in your heart, please feel free to do so as my hand passes over you. For all those names that we've said aloud, those we've typed in the chat, and those that we keep in our hearts, we turn to page 371 for the words of Misha Beirach. Misha Beirach Avotenu Mekor HaBracha Leimotenu. May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Misha Beirach Imotenu Mekor HaBracha Le'avotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shalema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen. We now prepare the Torah to be returned to the Ark. It's my pleasure to invite back up Jonathan to help us redress the Torah and to invite everyone else to please rise. Can you take a seat? Yai lai 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 lai. Yai lai 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 lai. Yai lai 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 lai. Eitz Chaim hi. Lemachaziki בה ותומכיה מאושר. דרכיה דרכי נועם וכל נתיבותיה שלום. השיבנו אדוני אליך ונשובה. חדש חדש ימינו, חדש ימינו כקדם. Thank you. Please be seated. Before I begin my Devar Torah this evening, I want to acknowledge that I'm going to be talking about how we talk about Israel and Palestine this evening. And there's a lot of noise on this subject in our social media feeds, in the news, in our lives. And oftentimes, even I feel as though I don't have the capacity to take on one more moment of it. So, if this is where you're at right now, if you don't have the capacity, and if you don't have the space to take more in on the subject at the moment, we understand if you need to take a bathroom break, or grab a glass of water, or go on a short walk. Taking care of yourself is Torah too. I want to say one more word of framing before delving into the subject at hand. I often talk about the counting of the Omer flippantly as an exciting counting exercise as well as a mitzvah. But the Omer is a counting of 7 weeks of 7 days, 49 days in total from Passover to Shavuot, or really from the second night of Passover to Erev Shavuot, but who's counting besides us? And this counting exercise lends itself to focusing on the transition in our people's story from escaping slavery in Egypt to receiving the 10 Commandments at Sinai. There is a reflection practice that I find meaningful during this time that comes from Kabbalah and Jewish mysticism. This time is seen as a time of preparation, of spiritual elevation, of self-improvement. And we do this work so that we may be worthy of closeness to God, perhaps reaching to be as close to God as our ancestors were at Sinai. Without getting too far into the weeds, each week is assigned a sphira, or a component of God, that we might aspire to. Week 1, we focus on chesed, or loving kindness. Week 2, we focus on gvura, on justice and discipline. And this week, week 3, we focus on tiferet. Tiferet literally means beauty, but the mystics saw this sphira, this element of God, as the balancing point between the first 2 sphirot of loving kindness and justice and discipline. We see Tiferet described as balance, truth, harmony, and even compassion. It is with this spirit in mind that I want to offer my words this evening. May these words be words of Tiferet, words in which we can find balance, truth, compassion, and even beauty. I love the saying, 2 Jews, 3 views, 7 opinions. And I love even more that despite this being the phrase that was taught to me, I've been told by numerous people that the phrase, I'm saying it wrong. And some people say it's 2 Jews, 3 opinions, and others say it's 2 Jews, 3 views, and so on and so forth. We Jews can't even agree on the phrase about us disagreeing with one another. And some of our disagreements can be entertaining or at least relatively inconsequential to the wider world, as we debate about whether gefilte fish is actually good, or what Shabbat melodies are legitimately traditional, or whether chicken parmesan should really be unkosher since the law in the Torah says you shall not boil a kid in its mother's milk, and chickens do not produce milk. These are all good debates. I love to have those ones. Over the past 7 months, however, many of us have found ourselves confronting much more painful disagreements with others and within ourselves. In a world that continues to polarize further by the day, we as Jews find ourselves called by ourselves and others to address Israel and Palestine. Many of us have even felt called to act, yet like many other issues, Jews are not always on the same page about where to focus our energy and our efforts. This has led to some of us sharing posts from opposing social media accounts, calling our legislators and leaders to act in opposing ways, attending opposing protests and counter-protests. And our social media feeds and news outlets have contributed to further polarized portrayals of who comprises the two sides that we might see as an us and a them, and what their motivations might be. Now, I want to be clear. I am not about to make an argument that whatever is fine and that all beliefs are okay, and I'm not about to excuse violence and hate speech that has taken place. There are a lot of opinions and behaviors going on in this arena that I still find incredibly harmful and inappropriate. And there are a lot of areas of growth and learning needed by many of us. That being said, I'm also incredibly concerned about the things that I am seeing and hearing and reading, even from within our own people. And I want to share with you a message that I have been needing to hear. Honestly, as I first tried to find my footing after the October 7th attacks, I will admit that I found myself making assumptions about who comprised the us and who comprised the them. I saw things that caused me real and legitimate fear, and I couldn't imagine what kind of person was not willing to take that seriously. Were they just mean-spirited or ignorant? And I also found myself being called a them by people I thought were in my corner. I felt indignant and unwilling to stand next to someone who would call me a them. In my least understanding moments, I found myself wanting to contribute to the noise, posting words of anger towards people who were amongst them. I have often taught my students that if someone claims to have all of the answers, take those answers with many grains of salt. In a moment when we were all searching for answers, the answers that were readily available, especially on social media, were oversimplified and without nuance. I was seeing more and more posts on my feed that translated to, "There's only one right side and it's mine," from people who identified with different us's. And I knew logically that this model of black and white, us versus them engagement was only leading to people digging their heels into the ground further, getting us nowhere. I felt myself digging my own heels into the ground. Yet, even so, I found myself drawn to the simplicity. My body and my brain went into protection mode, and I wanted to filter out the voices that were focused on them, even when those voices were coming from my own loved ones. I couldn't find the capacity to be curious or to listen, two skills that I usually value in myself. But what really scared me was when I started to find myself having difficulty accessing deep empathy for people that I knew were suffering. I wondered how I could claim to be praying for peace and to be a contributor toward a more peaceful world if I couldn't bring myself to leave my own pain. When I couldn't find the wisdom from within to come back to healing, I was grateful for the shining lights who brought me back to what I knew to be true. Simple answers may go viral faster, and some simple answers are true. But many truths worthy of our consideration exist beyond boundaries, and it is not a threat to our safety to accept that complexity. I am grateful to guiding voices like Rabbi Alicia Harris, Rabbi Jill Jacobs, the members of Ruach Galilit, or the Spirit of the Galilee, like Women Wage Peace, like Mo Husseini, like Brene Brown, who modeled holding uncomfortable complexity and competing truths without erasing their own experiences. I have sought out this truth for myself once again, and as I've done so, I've been grateful to my loved ones with whom I've had blessed, challenging, but meaningful conversations. This week, there was an article by Mo Husseini, or a blog post, that went around on many of our news feeds called 50 Completely True Things. And to be completely honest, a lot of swearing, not safe for work. I will not be reading excerpts of that particular article, but it's still, I think, worth reading. And I have compiled a list of some other true things that I've learned as I've tried to listen beyond sides of us and them. Number 1, Jews and Israelis have been dehumanized, and some of us feel called to prioritize protecting the Jewish people in Israel who have experienced immense trauma and loss from the past 7 months and from a history of violence through the generations. Number 2, Palestinians have been dehumanized, and some of us feel called to prioritize protecting the Palestinian people who have experienced immense trauma and loss from the past 7 months and from a history of violence through the generations. Number 3, there are people who say they are calling for peace and an end to war, who celebrated the October 7th attacks as a just rebellion and have chanted, "Palestine is our demand, no peace on stolen land." Number 4, there are people who, in the name of supporting Israel, have celebrated violence against Palestinians, played loud music to interrupt Muslim prayer times at protests, and have made signs saying things like, "Exchange each hostage for 100 pro-Palestinian American students." Number 5, there are people who say terrorist and mean Palestinian, and who say pro-Palestinian and mean anti-Semitic. And number 6, there are people who say Zionist and simultaneously mean villain and Jew. Number 7, there are people who have experienced the protests happening around the country as peaceful spaces advocating for dignity of Palestinians. And there are people who have experienced counter-protests as peaceful spaces advocating for dignity of Israel. And there are people who have experienced the protests and the counter-protests as threatening, menacing, and as places of further spread of hate speech. Number 8, there are white supremacist groups who are supporting the pro-Palestinian encampments because of the flagrant anti-Semitic rhetoric and cruelty being directed towards Jewish students. Number 9, in attendance of pro-Israel rallies, there have been right-wing groups and leaders who have vocally supported the Muslim ban and used dangerous language about Palestinians and Muslims. Number 10. There are people who would not call for a ceasefire, who were grateful when the ceasefires did take place and that more hostages were able to come home, and who have a pit in their stomach every time they hear of a new part of the war. Number 11, there are people who take every opportunity to question Israel's right to exist when they disagree with the actions of the Israeli government. Number 12, there are people who vehemently disagree with the Israeli government, but will not attend protests that criticize them because they will not question Israel's right to exist. Number 13, it feels different to see protesters in Israel than it does to see protesters in America. Number 14, it feels hard to watch the suffering of human beings on social media, of children, of parents, of neighbors, and we want the suffering to stop. Number 14, it feels hard to find hope and justify life just going on as normal, as we know that this war and the torture of hostages is still going on. Number 15, people with many areas of interest are worried about the outbreak of a wider regional war, and were terrified when there were attacks happening between Iran and Israel. They are concerned about further harm happening to people that they love and places that they love. And if we're being honest, I lost track of what number we're on, but people with many areas of focus just want the violence to end. In this week's Torah portion, we read, Lo ta'amod al dam rayacha. Don't stand idly by as your neighbor bleeds. And many different neighbors are bleeding at this moment. I want to close with words from Rabbi Lizzie Hademan from the Mishkan community in Chicago. She says, quote, with the world so torn asunder, so full of pain, destruction, hatred, and violence, and fear, I understand the desire to try to find a place of not just physical, but psychological safety, a place that makes sense, where it can be black and white, good guys and bad guys, evildoers versus victims. And maybe it was easier on October 8th to do that. But now, 7 months and over 34,000 Gazan deaths and over 2,000 Israeli deaths later, and over 1 million Gazans starving, and hundreds of thousands of Israelis and Palestinians displaced from their homes, and no guarantee that this war has brought any more security to anyone than before. It's not black and white. It's messy. Reality is messy. You have to put on blinders to make reality simple. If we are really paying attention to the totality of this moment, we don't get the luxury of feeling comfortable. It's profoundly uncomfortable. But if you feel like you're on the side that is blameless and pure, I invite you to make yourself a heart of many rooms and invite in it the voice of the Jew who is on the other side of the barricade, or on the other side of the generational divide. To stand in the breach and find the places where we can identify with what we do agree on so that we can work on it together. And in this movement, we'll find community, belonging, and inspiration as well. One that is based on building trust, being a mensch, and absolutely refusing to dehumanize anyone wrapped up in this awful conflict, whether it is in Israel and Palestine or right here at home. Because envisioning and working together toward a different way forward is the only thing that will make it possible, unquote. This Shabbat, and as we move forward, may we take in what we know to be true, and may we open up our hearts to believe that there are truths that we haven't considered yet, or that we haven't had the capacity to hold in our own hearts. May we each, in our own way, contribute to a world of peace. And may we each say in our own way that we have not stood idly by while our neighbor bleeds, whether it is in Israel and in Palestine or here at home. Kain Yehiratzon. May this be God's will.
Kain Yehiratzon.
We are now going to count the Omer. And we are on page 570. We are on the 18th day of the Omer. So let us say the blessing in the middle of the page, and then I will pronounce the day. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu al sfirat ha'omer. Our praise to you, Adonai, sovereign of all, who hallows us with mitzvot, commanding us to count the Omer. Hayom shmona asar yom shehem shnei shavuot v'arba'a yamim la'omer. Today is the 18th day, which is 2 weeks and 4 days of the Omer. We now continue on page 586 for the words of Aleinu. Please rise in ways you're able. Aleinu leshabeach la'adon hakol, latet gedula liotzer breshit, shelo asanu kegoye haratzot, velo samanu kemishpachot adama, shelo sam chelkenu kahem, vegor aleinu kechol hamonam, va'anachnu korim umishtachavim umodim lifnei melech malachei hamlachim hakadosh baruch hu v'nemar v'haya Adonai lemelech al kol haaretz bayom hahu yeh Adonai echad ushemo echad. Please be seated. We take a moment to think of those who are no longer with us on this earth, but remain with us in our memories of them and in the legacy they left for us in this world. As your loved one's name is read, please rise. This evening, we remember those who have been called to their eternal rest in recent days. Al Herman, remembered by Matthew Turetsky. And we remember those who are in the period of Shloshim, the 30-day period since burial. For Harlene Strauss, mother of Dan Strauss. This Shabbat, we also remember those whose yahrzeits occurred this past week. Jordana Aliza, sister of Janice Fontano. Marcia Ben Ora, mother of Rabbi Eve Ben Ora. Esther Macauer, mother of David Macauer. Eva Nagel, remembered by Barbara Nagel. Boris Putterman, remembered by Rosalie Rosenbaum. And Eliza Strad, remembered by Joel Strad. We now invite all who are observing the first year of mourning to rise at this time. And we now rise as a community with our mourners and turn to page 598 for the words of the mourners' Kaddish. Yitzgadal v'yitkadash shmei Rabba, be'alma divra chirute v'yamlich malchute, b'chayechon uvyomechon uv'chaye techol beit Yisrael, ba'agala uvizman kariv v'imru. Amen. Yehi shmei Rabba mevorach le'olam u'lalmei almaya. Yitbarach v'yitrabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yitaleh v'yithalal. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata da'amiran be'alma v'imru. Amen. Yehi shlama Rabba min Shemaya v'chayim aleinu ve'ol kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. Oseh shalom b'mramav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol yoshvei tevel, ve'imru. Amen. Zichronam v'yivracha, may all of their memories be for a blessing, to which we say, Amen. Please be seated. And I invite up our temple president, Cheryl Cohen, to share words of announcement.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Please remember to check the weekly and our website for all our news and event information. Together with the Tri-City Interfaith Council and the East Bay Holocaust Education Center, Temple Beth Torah will offer a multi-access interfaith Yom HaShoah program, Echoes in the Heart, Grief and Hope, this coming Sunday, May 12th at 6:30. I know it's Mother's Day, but you don't want to miss coming to this event. For those that are in person tonight, you have our exhibit is up for your perusing for those that are in person. On Sunday, May 19th, the Women of Temple Beth Torah will host mini golf fun for friends and family at Golfland Milpitas. This and many more may be found on our website in our weekly newsletter. Thanks to Cindy Monroe for managing AV and to Joel Strad for representing the worship committee. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. And just as a reminder for those who didn't see the email, there was a link to Torah study this week. There is not Torah study this week due to Mother's Day, but join us for next week as we will continue on in our study of the Siddur as holy text. We are going to continue with some words of gratitude. We'll start off with our family blessing. So I encourage you to reach out to people you consider family, however you define it. And if you are not in the same room that as someone you'd like to send this blessing to, I encourage you to hold them in your heart. And we hope they receive this blessing. May God bless you and keep you. May God shine God's face upon you and be gracious to you. May God's face turn to you and grant you peace, to which we say, Amen. Amen. And for our friends on Zoom, now's the time to grab some grape juice or grape beverage of some sort and some challah. And the blessing can be found on page 123. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu v'shabbat kodsho be'ahava uvratzon hinchilanu zikaron lema'aseh v'reishit ki hu yom techila למקראי קודש, זכר ליציאת מצרים, כי בנו בחרת, ואותנו קידשת, מכל העמים, ושבת קודשך, באהבה וברצון, הנחלתנו. ברוך אתה אדוני, מקדש השבת. חיים. Now we bless the motzi. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz b'te'avon. We are going to conclude this evening with the words of Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu on page 657. Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu, Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu, Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu ve'al kulam. Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu, Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu, Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu ve'al kulam. Salam Aleinu ve'al kol ha'olam. Salam, salam, salam Aleinu ve'al kol ha'olam. Salam, salam. Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu, Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu, Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu ve'al kulam. Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu, Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu, Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu ve'al kulam. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Shabbat Shalom to our
Shabbat.
friends on Zoom.
Shabbat Shalom to Zoom and in person.
Shabbat shalom, everyone.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.